Amen. Happy Sabbath, Elevate. It's so great to be here in the house of the Lord. Please join us as we sing our first song, You Keep On Getting Better. I will sing of your goodness. I will sing of your love. Though the seasons come quickly, you have always been enough. Though the night may get darker, though the waiting seems long, you have always been faithful to remind me of your love. You are good. In the morning I'll sing. You are good. In the evening I'll sing. You are good. You are good to me. Sing, you have always been patient. You have always been patient. You have always been kind. You're consistent through the ages. Oh, what a friend of mine. So I remind my soul to bless you, standing firm upon your truth, knowing you cannot be shaken, 'cause I've seen what you can do. You are good. In the morning I'll sing. You are good. In the evening I'll sing. You are good. You are good to me. Let's sing, you are good. You are good. In the morning I'll sing. You are good. In the evening I'll sing. You are good. You are good to me. You keep on getting better. 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 You are good. You are good. In the morning I'll sing. You are good. In the evening I'll sing. You are good. You are good to me. You are good. You are good. In the morning I'll sing. You are good. In the evening I'll sing. You are good. You are good to me.
Good morning, happy Sabbath.
We wanted to give a special welcome to everyone here this morning to Elevate.
So glad it's Saturday today, the seventh day of the week in which we can all come together and congregate and worship our God.
Yes, I was telling Juan Carlos that I appreciate the Sabbath so much more now that I'm in college because I get to rest on the Sabbath and spend a good portion of time with God. And we wanted to give a special thank you to you guys for wearing your mask and keeping social distance at church.
Now for our engagement question today. How does it feel when God takes his time? I would like for you to meditate on our scripture reading in Psalm 6.
It says, O Lord, don't rebuke me in your anger or discipline me in your rage. Have compassion on me, Lord, for I am weak. Heal me, Lord, for my bones are in agony. I am sick at heart. How long, O Lord, until you restore me? Return, O Lord, and rescue me. Save me because of your unfailing love, for the dead do not remember you. Who can praise you from the grave?
I am worn out from sobbing. All night I flood my bed with weeping, drenching it with all my tears. My vision is blurred by grief. My eyes are worn out because of all my enemies. Go away, all you who do evil, for the Lord has heard my weeping. The Lord has heard my plea. The Lord will answer my prayer. May all my enemies be disgraced and terrified. May they be suddenly turned back in shame.
Before I spoke a word, you were singing over me. You have been so, so good to me. Before I took a breath, you breathed your life in me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. When I was your foe, still your love fought for me. You have been so, so good to me. I felt no worth, you paid it all for me. You have been so, so kind to me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it, still you give yourself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. There's no shadow you won't light up, mountain you won't climb up, coming after me. There's no wall you won't kick down, lie you won't tear down, coming after me. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. Oh, it chases me down, fights till I God is worthy to be praised, and his name is so wonderful, so beautiful. Please sing along with us. What a beautiful name. You were the Word at the beginning, one with God the Lord Most High. Your hidden glory in creation, now revealed in you are Christ. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. And nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. You didn't want heaven without us, so Jesus, you put heaven down. My sin was great, your love was greater. What could separate us now? What a wonderful name it is. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a wonderful name it is. And nothing compares to this. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus. Death could not hold you. The veil tore before you. You silenced the boast of sin and grave. The heavens are roaring the praise of your glory. For you are raised to life again. And you have no rival, you have no equal. Now and forever, God, you reign. Yours is the kingdom, yours is the glory, yours is the name above all names. Holy, holy are you, Lord God Almighty. Worthy is the Lamb, worthy is the Lamb. You are holy, holy are you, Lord God Almighty. Worthy is the Lamb, worthy is the Lamb. Amen. What a beautiful name it is. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus Christ, my King. What a beautiful name it is. And nothing compares to this. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus. What a beautiful name it is. The name of Jesus.
James chapter 5, verse 16 tells us, "Therefore confess your sins to one another and pray for one another, so that you may be healed. The intense power of prayer is righteous, is very powerful." You know, during this time, we're all going through different circumstances. And at this time, I ask you that we can all strengthen each other as a family. So I invite you that you can turn to the person next to you and that you guys can pray for each other and so we can strengthen each other. Let's pray. Dear God, we thank you for the opportunity you've given us to wake up this morning, to come together and to pray for each other, Lord. And in Matthew, it tells us that, Lord, when 2 or 3 are gathered in your name, you are among us, Lord. And I ask you that your presence is felt here, but most importantly, it is felt throughout our lives, Lord. I ask you that you be with this program, that you be with us, and that you can continue to bless us. I pray all these things in your name. Amen.
So there used to be a company, I don't know if it's still around, it used to make watches. It was called Timex. Timex had a research department. Their research department did some research on people waiting. And it turns out that after their research, they found that people on average will wait on the car in front of them that isn't moving even though the light is green for 13 seconds before honking. I see some shaking of the heads. You don't think it's that long, huh? People will wait to say something. If they hear somebody talking during the movie at a movie theater, they'll wait 26 seconds before they tell them to hush. Waiting on somebody who's walked away, they'll wait about the same amount of time before they steal their seat. People who are talking too loud on a cell phone, they'll wait 45 seconds before they shush them. For a table at a restaurant, people will wait about 13 minutes. And for a blind date to show up, I don't know how they timed that, 20 minutes. And for the last person to show up for Thanksgiving dinner, they'll wait 20 minutes before they start eating. There's a story of a fellow that was talking to God, and he said, God, I read in your word that 1,000 years is like a single minute for you. Is that true? And God said, yes, that's true. And he said, well, then it's probably also true that $1 million is like a penny. And God said, yeah, that's right. And he says, can I have a penny? And God said, just a minute. Our scripture comes from Luke 8, verse 40. It's a story you know so very well. Now, when Jesus returned, the crowd welcomed him because they were all waiting for him. And look, a man who was named Jairus came, and this man was a ruler of the synagogue, and he fell down at the feet of Jesus, and he started imploring him to come to his house because he had only one daughter, about 12 years old, and she was dying. So we've identified the crisis. It's an unequivocal crisis. It's a life and death crisis. It's an immediate crisis. And he's made the request properly on the ground at Jesus' feet, and we have him identified because he's an important person. The story goes on. Now, as he was going, the crowds were pressing against him. So, it turns out that Jesus apparently responded immediately and to the crisis, unequivocally and immediately. He responded. Verse 43 says, and a woman who was suffering from hemorrhages. Now, hemorrhages is not a word that's actually in the Greek. They use the word risi and ema, flow of blood. This woman's name is not given, so we'll just call her Emma. That's, the word for blood is hema. You thought I was going to call her Flo, didn't you? That would have been bad. Okay, and a woman who was suffering from hemorrhages, Emma, for 12 years, who, though she had spent all her assets on physicians, was not able to be healed anymore, came up behind him. So we got a new crisis identified. This is not an immediate crisis. This is opposite of the other one. This is not apparently life and death, and it's not unequivocal. When for a woman does a flow of blood become a crisis? After a day? After 2 days? I'll give you somewhere between 2 days and 12 years, it becomes a crisis. And she touched the edge of his cloak, and immediately her hemorrhaging stopped. She doesn't have any request, no identification. Jesus said, "Who is the one that touched me?" Now, there's a healing that's been identified. It's a private healing. And Emma wants it kept confidential. And it initiates a significant delay for Jairus. Waiting is beginning, but the waiting is ending for Emma. When they all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds are pressing hard and crowding you." Jesus said, "Someone touched me because I know power has gone out from me." And the woman saw that she did not escape notice. She came trembling and falling down before him in the presence of all the people. She told for what reason she'd touched him and that she was healed immediately. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has saved you. Go in peace." While he was still speaking, someone came from the synagogue ruler's house saying, "Your daughter is dead. Trouble the teacher no longer." But Jesus, when he heard this, replied to him, "Don't be afraid. Only believe, and she'll be healed." Now, when they came to the house, he did not allow anyone to go with him except Peter, John, and James, and the father and the mother of the child. They were all weeping and mourning for her, but he said, "Don't weep, because she's not dead. She's sleeping." And they began laughing at him because they knew that she was dead. But he took up her hand and called, saying, "Child, get up." And her spirit returned, or her breath returned, and she got up immediately. And he ordered something to be given to her to eat, and her parents were astonished, and he ordered them not to tell what had happened. So another healing identified. This one's immediate. It's ultimate healing from death. It's unequivocal, and it's public. Now I've got a pop quiz. I know you have quizzes that go up on the screen here. I don't have a fancy quiz like that. You just have to think the answers in your mind. Are you ready? You're at Starbucks in line. Y'all go to Starbucks, right? They have decaffeinated products, I'm sure. So you're in line at Starbucks, and the one behind the counter and the person at the front of the line are in an extended discussion of cold brew techniques. And when you think it's about to wrap up, then they lapse into bean harvest sustainability. What do? A, you rejoice because you're observing a connection in a very polarized society. No? B, you leave an extra tip because you're excited to learn what they're talking about. C, you finish reading your morning devotional while you wait and you're glad for the moments of pause. 4, you make cattle sounds like at the slaughterhouse. No? Okay. Next quiz. You're going to an organ recital at the Meyerson. The person in front of you in the line is trying to get their e-ticket to work on their device. It's been over 7 minutes, and no end is in sight. A, you invite the person next to you in line to a virtual organ recital with Dr. Howard. B, you begin an ad hoc Bible study with the other people in line. C, you scheme to sneak around the ticket people to get into the hall another way. D, cattle sounds. There are all kinds of waiting in life. We have little trivial waitings like that, waitings in doctor's offices, waitings that happen all the time, but we also have more serious waiting. Many of us have stressed out over waiting for God to provide His chosen spouse, His career that is meaningful or deep. For many people, waiting for a child is excruciating. And there are waitings in hard marriages. Lewis Smead says, "Waiting is our destiny. As creatures who cannot by themselves bring about what they hope for, we wait in the darkness for a flame we cannot light. We wait in fear for a happy ending that we cannot write. We wait for a not yet that feels like a not ever." Waiting on the Lord is an act of obedience. John Ortberg says, waiting is the hardest work of hope. There's a story about a person that went to a fruit stand in the countryside, and And they waited at the fruit stand, and they went to this fruit stand a lot, and they'd always been treated well, but it's one of those days. Have you noticed that the COVID thing and all the masks and all the distance that it creates between people has made you a little short? It has me. It makes me feel pesky sometimes. Makes me feel, just short. So this person is standing in line. It's a lady standing in line. She's waiting for and everybody in line ahead of her seems to be getting wonderful, wonderful service, and all it's doing is ticking her off. She sees them getting service, but she's still waiting, and it's hot, and she's annoyed. Sometimes you ever feel annoyed when there's really no reason to be annoyed, but you're just annoyed? That's me a lot. She finally gets to the front of the line, and she says, I just need some grapes. And the lady says, just a second, and walks away. Waiting. The lady is fuming by this point. In her heart, she has designed all manner of evil for the proprietor of this stand. Finally, the lady comes back with some gorgeous grapes and says, I'm sorry it took so long, but for you, I wanted my very best. God comes to Abraham. Abraham wasn't asking for a promise. Abraham was just Abraham, and God said, I'm going to make you a father at age 75. I'm going to make you not only a father, I'm going to make you a father of a great nation. He had to wait 24 years for that child. 400 years to become the father of a nation. Moses, I'm going to have you lead the children of Israel out and into the promised land. But you have to wait 40 years in the wilderness. All through the Old Testament, God promises the coming Messiah. Centuries pass. From the time that Moses says there will come a prophecy, it's between 12 and 1400 years. Bible says, wait on the Lord 29 times. But here's the puzzlingest one of all. Puzzlingest is a word. I just said it is. Revelation 22:20, next to the last verse of the Bible. The one who testifies about these things says, yes, I am coming quickly. So be it. Come, Lord Jesus. Not 12 or 14 centuries. 20 centuries. Ben Patterson says, what God does in us while we wait is as important as what we're waiting for. Suffering produces perseverance. Paul says perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. God is in this, waiting. There's a really, really powerful scripture. You heard Psalm 6 earlier. You see this one about the waiting. I cannot imagine being Jairus. I have daughters. And you know, we get anxious if they get the sniffles. Your parents concern themselves with you. If you are a parent, you know the concern. If you're not a parent yet, you don't know the concern. I remember one time my daughter was very sick. She had, this was my middle daughter, she had some sort of a respiratory thing. And she was crying, and there's one thing worse than your child crying, and that is your child crying weakly. W-E-A-K-L-Y. Many of your daughters will cry weakly, W-E-E-K-L-Y. but crying weakly with an A in it. I'm not picking on girls. Boys cry too. They just hide it. So my daughter, she was less than 1, and she was crying so weakly she could barely get her breath to cry. That's a very frightening thing. We had guests in our home that had planned to come from a long distance for a long time, and they were in our home, and talk about frustrating. Somebody had to kind of tend the guests while we were trying to have this child. The doctor had said put her face near the open freezer so she could get cold air, and then put her near some steam by the shower to get some warm air, back and forth, hot and cold therapy, right? And so we were trying to do this. If you're a parent, you know the hours and hours of this. If you're a child, you're ungrateful for it. No offense. You weren't there, really. I mean, you didn't remember it, but you go back and forth, and we're having to somehow tend the other child and these guests. It made it seem twice as long. It was a long, long night. We just kept wishing the guests would leave, but you can't just say, we're really having a tough night. Why don't you haul on out of here? Usually we don't say that to our guests. So if you're at our house and it looks like we're having a rough night, when we suffer with waiting, there are important and powerful things that happen to us. Now, here's a problem. We sometimes get the perspective that we are supposed to do something to accomplish the end for which we're waiting. And the perfect example of this is when you're looking for a spouse, right? I went through school here and I didn't have a spouse. And they used to have a saying in those days for religion students. We didn't have a theology program in those days because we didn't teach Hebrew, thankfully. And so they had this saying, when you were going to graduate without a spouse, no peach, no preach, is what they used to say. Peach was slang for a wife, in case you didn't know. And so my anxiety grew. I was getting to graduate, and there wasn't a girl at this whole school that showed any interest in me. Shame on you. So time went. But sometimes even just a little bit of patience. I remember I dated a lot of girls at this school. I dated a couple girls for a long period of time, and I dated several girls for a short period of time. I remember one I asked, she used to work in the bursar's window back when the administration was in the administration building. You know where the bursar's window was, right? And she sat behind that bursar's window. She's a nice girl. And I said, hey, there's a program on Saturday night. Are you going? She said, I don't know yet. I said, great. Would you like to go with me? And she said, no. Usually they make excuses. Usually they try to be helpful. But no, she was not helpful. Well, I guess she was helpful in a way. Anyway, the point is I waited, and I never would have thought. I never would have thought that God would have delivered to me His perfect mate for me after graduation, after my first placement. Along came my first placement, and I was placed with a pastor who had been a missionary evangelist in Inter-American Division. Big, tall, dour fellow, and almost never smiled. And it was in the Fort Worth church, and so I went and found a place to stay, and I went up to the Fort Worth church, and lo and behold, he had a daughter. What a charming, charming young lady. Everything developed beautifully for us to date, break up, and get back together again for 4 years. It wasn't a really quick experience, but it was a good experience. And in the end, we've been married now for 34 plus years. And God is good. But there's waiting involved. Painful waiting, anxious waiting. Waiting that doesn't tell you what the answer is. And the problem is, as I was trying to say earlier, sometimes get our roles reversed. Sometimes we think that our job is to go out there and get it done. And a lot of people do that. And I think a lot of people marry the wrong person when they do that. A lot of people think, I've got to go out there and I've got to get a career. I remember when I got out of high school, I said, what will I major in? I don't do anything well. Right? I mean, that's one of the things you kind of look at when you're in high school. What am I going to major in? What do I do well? And I didn't do anything well. All I could do was play the French horn. And so I said, well, I guess I'll major in music. Somebody said, do you want to be a band director? And I said, not really. They said, well, then what do you plan to do with that? I said, I don't know. It's the only thing I'm good in. They're giving me a scholarship. I guess I'll go take that. We try to be the person who goes and makes the acquisition. Guess what? You are not the hunter-gatherer. God is the hunter-gatherer. You are his prey. God is out there hunting for a spouse for you if you want one. I'm not saying you have to want one. But God is out there hunting for your spouse. And when your heart is right and their heart is right and y'all are ready, he will put you together. You don't have to worry. And you don't have to do it yourself. Your career, statistics show that the career you start in will probably not be the career you finish in. So don't worry about it. Just continue to make yourself better. Continue to grow. And God will grow your career. I'm telling you, who would have guessed that I would be here 25 years after graduating law school? 25 years of representing people, and time flows and time goes, and you think, well, this is it then. This is the whole thing until God calls you back. And there's a change. You are not the hunter. You are not, frankly, hate to tell you this, you are not the decider. God is hunting you. He's deciding for you. And you are the agreeer. You are the one who is willing to stop running and be captured. Are you ready? Apparently not. Or the waiting would be over. Maybe our readiness is what God is waiting for. I think of this fella Job. Job's got it all, of course, you know. He's got the American dream. He's never heard of America, but he's got the American dream. And then in a day, the American dream is wiped out. Job 1:20, he says, Job arose. He tore the Hebrew says robe, he tore his robe, and he shaved his head, both signs of mourning. And he fell on the ground, and he worshiped God. And he said, naked I came out from my mother's womb, and naked I will return. Yahweh gives, Yahweh takes. Let Yahweh's name be praised. How does he do that? Everything he had was taken. How does he do that? I want to do that. I want to know that whether it's waiting or whether it's suffering or whether it's loss, that I can say, I came by grace of God. I will go by the grace of God. And in the middle, I will live By the grace of God, may God be praised. Lamentations 3:25, Yahweh is so good to those who wait on him, to the person that seeks him. It's good to wait in silence for the salvation of Yahweh. It's good for a man who carries the yoke of his childhood. Let him sit alone and be silent when he has laid it out on him. Let him put his mouth in the dust. Perhaps there is hope.
Happy Sabbath, church. My name is Jenny Kova, and I want to share a song with you guys that is really special to me. I wrote this song a couple months ago, and it was originally just supposed to be a prayer journal entry, but I decided to make it into a song because I really believe it's something that God wanted me to share. And during this time in my life, I had a lot of anger and bitterness in my heart to the point to where it was so hard for me to face God. And as Christians, we tend to believe that we're not allowed to get angry. And we hear and read things like, turn the other cheek or be the better person. And although those are really easy things to say, when life hits us with a really difficult situation or something very unfair happens to someone we love, it's very difficult, if not almost impossible sometimes, to put that into practice. And this song is called Blue Rose. And I don't know if you guys knew this, but blue roses don't exist. It's impossible. You can never genetically modify a rose enough for it to be blue. Therefore, it's impossible. And for me, a blue rose perfectly is a symbol of what a miracle is, something only God can do. So I invite you guys to really meditate on the words of this song and really listen to what God is trying to tell you this morning. My heart is growing cold, so tired of being angry at the world. I know how to let go, but how can I stop fighting? Is my worth not worth fighting for? You say love is patient and love is kind. Turn the other cheek, for you are called higher. But what do you do when they're walking all over you? What does this mean? I need your guidance, your wisdom. I need the kindness of Jesus. My flesh is weak, I need healing. Calm the tempest in my heart. People are cruel, don't know what to do. I need a miracle. A blue rose. My spirit is breaking. Breath's not worth taking. Though I cannot see, I know you are beside me.
impossible with you. I need a miracle. I need your guidance, your wisdom. I need the kindness of Jesus. My flesh is weak, I need healing. Calm the tempest in my heart. People are cruel, don't know what to do. I need a miracle. A blue rose, ooh, create in me a blue rose. Ooh, I need a miracle. A blue rose. Ooh, I need your guidance, your wisdom. I need the kindness of Jesus. My faith is weak, I need healing. Calm the tempest in my heart. Ooh. People are cruel, don't know what to do. I need a miracle. A blue
Hey, Adam, that God that you described who is sexist and homophobic and angry and is just waiting for everybody to mess up so he can burn them in hell forever and ever and ever. Adam, I don't believe in that God either. I don't believe in that God either.
What you saw there on the screen is Infinite Hope 2020, a live long week event happening, stream event, from November 6th through 12 at 7 p.m. So if you have time, come listen. Thank you for giving. When it comes to giving, elevate growth. So if you can, like, for offering, you can do Venmo at adventistgiving.org, or the box is in the back. So thank you.
You can also follow This is Elevate TX on Instagram for more information on the event. And to repeat our engagement question for today, it says, how does it feel when God takes his time?
It feels like an eternity for us because we don't know when his answer is going to come back. It could be a couple hours after we plead for help, or years into the future. But what we do know is that God will answer us for what is good. It can be, yeah.
I remember a few months ago, after I graduated high school, I had a serious conversation with God, and I told him, God, what do you want for me in my life? Like, I feel like I have no direction in my life. And it was just a very, very dark time in my life. And I prayed to God. I've never prayed to him so much. I was on my knees and I was crying and I was like, God, show me your plan, because I want to do your work for like the rest of my life. And I prayed for months, and I felt like I had no response. And I told my mom, why isn't God like listening to me? I feel so alone. I feel so discouraged. I don't know what to do. And she told me like it was the waiting time that, you know, it's the hardest for us, and we just have to be faithful to him through that time. And I'm so glad I stayed faithful through him, because he has blessed me with so much. He has opened doors in my life that I would have never thought would have actually like happened to me. I'm so blessed to be here and to have met such amazing people, and I'm just very grateful that, you know, I was faithful through him through that time. So, yes.
There is waiting, but there's victory in Jesus. Sing with us.
The weapon may be formed, but it won't prosper. When the darkness fails, it won't prevail. 'Cause the God I know knows only how to triumph. My God will never fail. My God will never fail. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. There's power in the mighty name of Jesus. Every war he wages, he will win. I'm not backing down from any giants. I know how this story ends. Yes, I know how this story ends. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. You take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. And you take what the enemy meant for evil, and you turn it for good. You turn it for good. And I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord. I'm gonna see a victory. I'm gonna see a victory. For the battle belongs to you, Lord.
Thank you very much for coming to worship this morning. As tradition, we would like for you to stand up and say our blessing before we go. And may God himself, the God of peace,
sanctify you through and through. May your whole spirit, soul, and body be kept blameless at the coming of our Lord Jesus Christ. The one who calls you is faithful, and he will do it.
Thank you.
keep on